All right, we need to set the valve stem protrusion and installed height and pack the springs on these Sportster heads before we put them together. Stem protrusion is just how far the valve's sticking up, measured from the top of the valve to the spring pocket, spring seat. So all the valve stem protrusion is, you just take your dial caliper and measure from the top of the valve to the spring seat there. We are at 1.995. And then we're going to measure the bottom of the top collar to the top of the valve guide. It's going to give us how much camber lift we get before the collar smacks the seal or the valve guide. Both in cams, we know we're already in there, but we're going to check it anyway. It's in there, lift the guide up. 600 thousandths, or a little over 600 thousandths. Cam lift on this thing's, or valve lift's only 490, so even if you add the guide in there, we're still got plenty of room. We're going to go ahead and measure the installed height for the seat. And it looks like we're at 1.790, 1.795 maybe, close to it. We're just going to say 1.790 because this valve stem height gauge was off about 5 thousandths when I measured it. All right, so doing the rear intake now, we got 1.790 for the installed height. Go ahead and do the other head. Okay, we're at 1.785 on the front intake. Okay, let me clarify on this valve guide clearance here. All you're measuring is from the bottom of the collar here down to the top of the guide. All that's doing is, so if you're using a higher lift cam, that when it's opening, the bottom of the collar ain't smacking the valve guide or the valve seal. So we're at roughly 675 thousandths on all four of them. This one's a little bit more, it's like 680, which is fine. But all you're doing is you're just taking your dial calipers and you're measuring between those 2 points and writing it down, just so you know that if you got enough clearance. Now this thing's got more than enough clearance because they're only 490 lift cams, so they're stock, they're bolt-in cams. But if you want with something higher, you might have to cut down the top of the guide. And they make a tool for that. I've got several of them in different sizes that you just run it off a drill and basically it recuts the top of the guide in the same shape. You can just shorten it however you want it. And that's about it. So let me check the installed height on this last valve here. And that one there is at 1.785 as well. So that's good on all these. Now we need to check our springs to see how much we can pack these things, if we can show them at all. And we'll do that in a couple minutes here. So when you're measuring this, you want to stick the bottom collar, bottom spring pad or spring retainer in the bottom, or spring purse, whatever you want to call it. I call it bottom collar. So that's just to you get the correct installed height. All this thing does is mimicking what the valve is set at, or what the valve spring's set at. Okay, this isn't the perfect way to do it, but we're working with what we got and what most people have access to. So we've got our valve spring in there with the 2 collars. You're going to need to measure the collars because you're doing it like this. You're going to have to subtract the thickness of the collars to what the spring is actually doing. So we're going to totally coil bond the spring until it stops. We're at 1.380. Okay. Then we're going to open that up 80 thousandths. So we should be 1,440 minus the thickness of the collars, which in this case was 180 thousandths. So I already did this one. What I ended up with, spring was, let me show you. So you got that. That's your clearance there. Then you're going to go ahead and open it up the rest of the way. You basically take the number you had right there, and then you're adding whatever the valve lift is to it, which in our case was 490. Okay, so cool down the spring. I don't know, it was 1,380. Okay, 1,380 minus the 180 thousandths. And then we're going to add our clearance for coil bind of 80 thousandths. Okay, what we ended up on that rear exhaust was we don't need any shims at all. The spring height is right on it. Our installed height was 1,790. Our spring came out to 1,780. They don't make a 10,000 shim, so we're not shimming that one. Small shim we got 15. And we'll go ahead and do the rest of these and see if any of the rest of them need shimming. After calculating these out, I'm going to go ahead and shim them because I use 80 thousandths clearance, and really I could have used 50. So I can actually shim these a little bit on each one. I'll probably do, some of them I can do 30 on, the other ones I'll do 15. I think the rear exhaust I'll do 15. This one, I'm at 1. Damn, can't read my own writing. I'm at 1,760. That one can't take any shims there. That one's 1,797, so that can go, well, I could go 30 on that and 30 on that. Actually, I could go 30 all the way across the board, and that'd put me exactly at 50 thousandths coil bind clearance. So we're going to do 30s all the way across. Anyway, need to go ahead and wash these now, and wash the valves, wash the heads, and everything's set and ready to go as far as that goes. I can wash these in a little bit. It's getting hot out here. I'm going to go, let me write this down. 30 thousandths across the board. So our springs will be packed good. I know this looks like chicken scratch to you, but makes perfect sense to me. All I've got here is my stem protrusion, clearance, collar clearance from the bottom of the collar to the top of the guide, the installed height that we measured. Our coil bind height is where the basically mash the spring all the way closed. Coil bind clearance is just with how much your clearance you got. I use 80 and I could have used 50. So I probably am going to stick with 50. And then this is the final spring clearance, or the springs calculated out at. So that's 1,780, 1,760, 1,797, and 1.8. But we're adding 30,000 shims to them. So anyway, I think that's enough for this. Time to go eat some lunch. And getting bright out, getting hotter. It was cloudy out a little bit ago, but you guys take care. Have a good weekend coming up. And thanks for watching. Bye-bye.